Good afternoon, everyone from Lismore in Australia. Thank you very much for attending my rehearsal for my upcoming oral defense. My topic is synchronous web conferencing. The title was a pedagogical model for effective learning. What is synchronous web conferencing? Is actually what we're doing here, as we all know, it's a web-based application for online real-time teaching and learning system. I mentioned that on page 14 of my dissertation. My institution's background is a mixture of blended learning as well as face-to-face classes that has textbook study guides, and we use the Blackboard learning management system. Most of our digital learning teaching and learning processes is asynchronous. Okay, the usual online discussions, multimedia content, assignments, and quizzes. Until my study, there's no synchronous web conferencing. Okay, nobody's using it. So why does my study matter? I've introduced this system or this way of teaching and learning at UNISIM, and I've conducted a study on it, which is this study. Now, the research and problem is this. My research question will come in a minute, but basically, it needs help me solve my own situation problem in the sense that in the class I was teaching with 80+ students, for the lab sessions, we had to use two classrooms. Okay, classroom 1 and classroom B2. Okay, because of the seating capacities. So for lab sessions, students have to go to two places, and it was physically difficult to teach two places. So how it worked was, I spent half the time in one classroom, and then another time in the other classroom. So having synchronous web conferencing, that allows me to teach concurrently to two places. Okay, that neatly solved a situation problem. Here are my research questions. In our context, what's the difference in terms of student achievements between students who have experienced web conferencing and those who experience traditional classroom face-to-face instructions? Does class size matter? Second question is, and what aspects of web conferencing enhance students' learning experience? And my final question is there a pedagogical model that can guide the teaching and learning in web conferencing context? My literature review, part 2. My original idea comes from a paper by De Freitas and Newman that identifies there is a lack of literature in the area of synchronous web conferencing, the pedagogical aspects. Okay, that needs further investigation. And my literature review is broken into two areas, from technologies to the pedagogical side. So the beginning is in terms of adoption. Different places. Notice Southern Cross University is here. Stephen's paper identifies that a review that you use Blackboard Collaborate, formerly Illuminate, and this is also being used widely across Australia. I know at different places. Hong Kong Science and Technology University also adopts that. The alternative is Adobe Connect, and that's been adopted at Athabasca University and the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In Singapore, different university uses different system. WebEx is used at the National University of Singapore, and another system called AQ Conference at the other university. IBM, they have their own proprietary Lotus Live products. When it comes to technology selections, my literature reviews varies. Okay, starting with Bates and Post section frameworks that gives guidance on how a technology should be selected. And then I zoom in and narrow down on two papers that looks at comparative studies between the various well-known established synchronous products. And Sholo and Hilbertling's work compares Illuminate and Adobe Connect. Essentially, both systems offer similar functionalities. Okay, they do different. They do the same thing, and they have their own advantages and disadvantages. In terms of actually deployment, study done by Montgomery and Kings in Canada's North Alberta Institute of Technologies looks at IP conferencing. This is the beginning stage of synchronous web conferencing. And over at Victoria University, Irvin did a study that on multiple access. What it means is Dr. Irvin at Victoria University in Canada, she has a TIE lab that enables both face-to-face as well as the online synchronous learning lesson conducted simultaneously. At the student level, there are 2 doctoral studies dissertation I cover. Lee studies did a study on spoken English using synchronous learning. His work was rather limited in the sense that he only has 15 participants and ended up with 7, so the sample size was quite small. Another weakness was that he used both Skype as well as Adobe Connect to do a study, so it became rather confusing. The genre is very interesting. Her studies on e-learning management systems looks at medical students between face-to-face surgeons as well as a surgeon using a medical instructor using e-learning mode of teaching. There's no difference in terms of student results. I've chosen this study because of the similarities of her research designs and methodologies. Okay. On the pedagogy side, Lorilar's conversation framework is the basis of my theoretical framework here. Essentially, her conversational frameworks identifies that in any learning and teaching activities, 2 levels of learning takes place, both at the discussion level and experiential level. And recently, Lorilat has published some works about pedagogical pattern, which I will be able to review later. That relates to my work. Norton's work on pedagogical action research, that I've adopted that to guide me through how I conducted the research. Visual and Kohler's Pedagogical Technological Contents Knowledge Framework, the PTCK framework, has been well, I would say well discussed and well presented at different conferences. Where it fits here is guides my thinking in terms of the work I do should not be isolated between technology and pedagogy. It should be viewed both in a unified way. Now, because of the dependency of technologies, Myers and Pavill's work on the limitations on human minds about multimedias and cognitive load has allowed me to ensure that I don't overburden my participants. Okay, and then this study by Kemba on the characteristics of Asian students, it really is perception basically. Most observer noticed that Asian students tend to adopt the rote learning approach, but Kemba in his study in University of Hong Kong proved that this perception is untrue in the sense that Asian students, because of the way the teaching and learning was taught, they realized that they thought because of a need to learn all the content materials, that's why their learning modes tended to be more rote learning. But they can, as Kemba argued, that participate in more of an active and discussive type of learning, participatory. Various literatures review on learning theories, from behaviorist to constructive, this to social learning. Okay. Now, methodology. The methodology parts I need to explain and introduce in the sense that starting with what is known as a paradigm of research methodology. Basically, what this paradigm means is a worldview. Okay, what does a researcher's positions in terms of your research positions? In my case, I've adopted what is known as the pragmatic transformative mixed methods, as quoted in Mackenzie and Knight's paper, purely because of the pragmatic needs of what I'm doing. The other 2 paradigms are the positivist and naturalistics. Positive is on the quantitative side, and naturalistic is in the qualitative side. In my case, I've adopted the mixed research. Action research is what I've used in order to conduct my investigations. Research design, I need to point out that instructor is as the researcher, that is where I am in my study. Research design is based on two non-equivalent group pre-test, post-test of a quasi-experiment. Okay. When it comes to setup and procedure of my studies, the Diploma of Management Studies, I have a research assistant helping me here. My class of about 60 to 80 students, it depends on different semesters, is divided into 3 semesters, split into 2 groups, the treatment and the participants group, and the control group. And on a voluntary basis, those who would like to experience synchronous web conferencing join the treatment group, and those who decided not to, they stay in the face-to-face lesson. 3 semesters study were conducted over 3 different classes of the same subjects. 7-week periods, 14 face-to-face lessons, each lesson 3 hours. So amongst these 14 lessons, I use some of them for web conferencing. In this course on computing information systems, there's lab components, which are what I mentioned earlier about this 2 classroom situations. And by traditions, all the students have 4 labs. And because of my experiments, I requested the administration department to give me all 14 lessons as labs initially, but they couldn't for resource reasons. And I was able to negotiate it at the end 8 lab sessions for synchronous web conferencing. Now, this is a syllabus of the course. As you can see, these are the topics, and these are the 14 topics, of which 10 are the theoretical-based topics and the 4 practical lessons in the labs. Okay. As I started the investigations, I had to do a pre-test for the different groups, so that the students who've been assigned to the treatment group, they are of the similar performance as compared to the non-participant students. And the 2 tests I've conducted that prove that there's no significant difference between the students, between the control and treatment group in both semesters. Okay. Instrumentation, what did I use to gather the data? In terms of student results, end of course examination scores. Yes, Stephen, please.
Thank you. Just back on that previous slide,
yep.
You said before you had 3 sessions you run it. You only did the pre and post test in 2 sessions, or you're just showing results for 2 of the 3 sessions here?
Good question, Stephen. Thank you for asking that. Now, I have to be very honest here. I did pre-test for 2 semesters out of 3 only. Okay. The reason being that my initial plan was a pre-test should not be necessary if I had done randomization, meaning those students who agreed to do, okay, then I asked my research assistants to blindly, randomly select a subgroup of, let's say, if 40 agreed to do treatment, then my research assistant would blindly draw lots of 30 to go into treatment group. But the problem ended up that because of lack of student participants, patients, I had no choice but to allocate everybody into the treatment group. And for that reason, a pre-test was necessary. Now, because I wasn't aware of this for the first semesters, I missed out on the pre-test for the first semester, which is October 12. And when I went to conferences and asked people for views and feedbacks, people were saying pre-test randomizations. At that time, I couldn't quite understand why was it necessary, but I'm glad I did the pre-test, and that explains the reason why I have only 2 semesters, because I had planned to do randomizations, but due to lack of student participation, I didn't get enough participants. That's why I ended up having to do a pretest. Does that answer your question, please, Stephen?
Yep, that's fine. It's a good example that I put in the chat area there of action research in action, I guess. The value of having a couple of successive cycles where you can modify what goes on. CQ, Tanya also had a question she dropped in the chat area there about exactly what was pre-tested.
Okay. Is there another question, or may I continue, please, Tanya or Stephen or everybody?
CQ, can you address Tanya's question there? She was just asking what it was that you pre-tested in the chat area.
Okay. Yes, sorry. Yeah, that's right. I pre-tested about the course, basically, about their level of background in terms of similarities. What I pre-tested them was an actual set of 10 multiple choice questions relating to this course that cover all the course topics at the beginning. So it was actually a past exam question paper, a subset of exam papers. And basically the way I did it was I gave everybody the same same worksheets. The green colors for the participants and the white colors for the non-participants. They all did it together, and then thereafter I did the processing of the results to find out their similarity or difference. So that was what I did. So that was the pre-test. Does that answer the question, please, Tanya? Okay, thank you, Tanya. It's related to the course. That's correct. I shall now continue. Okay. A survey, in addition to the exam score, a survey was administered for the participants by my research assistants. At the same time, a subset of the participants were interviewed also by my research assistants at the end of each course. What's the purpose? Why? To solve the research problem and to answer each of the research questions I mentioned earlier. Okay. So data analysis, we're here now. Okay. My data analysis is based on per research questions. Okay, and then the appropriate research methods analysis, the data I will cover and explain. Research question 1 is there a difference between those who were on web conferencing and those who were in face-to-face? I started by looking at data overall, okay, for all 3 semesters, and a two-way ANOVA test was done for all the students over 3 semesters, as well as a chi-square test. And then individually per semesters, I conducted t-tests to see is there any difference between treatment and control. Some data here, basically what this two-way ANOVA is saying is by groups, okay, by student groups, meaning everybody's split between treatment and control over 3 semesters. The data shows that there is a slight difference in terms that treatments perform slightly better than control. I'll show you the graph later on which explains it clearer. At the same time, by semesters, over 3 semesters of everybody's, the mean exam score for the first semester was higher than the second semester, and the second semester was marginally higher than the next semester. Now, I found that here is the graph here, basically. Okay, this is the overall between control and treatment, and this is everybody over 3 semesters, and this is the overall population. At the overall pictures, I found it quite baffling and quite confusing, but it shouldn't be a surprise because one semester you obviously don't get students to expect them to be able to perform similarly over the semester. So these are the results fluctuations. But please let me continue to explain at the semester level. Okay, that will show there's no difference until the last semesters. Now, when it comes to, okay, sorry, this is the chi-square test about students both in the treatment group, i.e. those experiencing web conferencing and those face-to-face lessons. In terms of, you see the tables here, in terms of passing rates, there's no difference basically. Okay, so the data from the chi-square identifies that there's no relationship between a student achievement this, in terms of the treatment and control over 3 semesters. Okay, so there's no difference basically. Now individually, the results explains that in the first semesters no significant difference. Okay, second semester also no significant difference. However, the first semester the people who are in the treatment group did better than control group. Now I was looking for reason to explain why, and a couple of reasons I found could be because of the class size was smaller. Okay, and also during the third semesters I was able to took in feedbacks about what I could have done in terms of the pedagogical levels that would enable students to benefit more from the learning experience of using web conferencing. Okay, so I was improving as I was go through 3 semesters. So these are the reasons. Okay, and this is a picture. In any case, the results are not that drastically significantly different in the first semester. Basically, what I'm saying is we don't have a poor performance rate in the control group and a really good performance rate in the treatment group. Okay, so statistically there is a difference, but it's not a major huge difference, and clearly there's no difference in the first 2 semesters. Okay. Next, question 2. What I mentioned earlier already helped me explain question 2. I used the last semesters because of small class size, and possible explanation as I mentioned here. Because I did exam preparations in the last semester, which I did not do in the first semester, this is an exam activity on web conferencing, and possibly that explains why a student in the treatment group did better. Research question 3 about the overall learning experience and which aspects of the synchronous learning students benefited. Overall, as you can see, the data comes from a survey of 7-point Likert scale, and overall the satisfaction level increased from one semester to another semester. But importantly, even at the point when I started, the overall average was over 4 points. So means 4 and beyond are the positive, and then 1 and then less than that is the negative. So students' experience of synchronous learning have been increasing positively over 3 semesters. And then exactly what aspects of the activities or what reason that contributed to their experience. This is where I did a stepwise regressions of all the survey variables, okay, using learning experience as the dependent variables and a list of other factors as the independent variables. And the regressions, multiple regressions, turns out a couple of variables that has a relationship or associations. For the first semester, ease of use, interaction, and duration of the session was significant. Second semester, same ease of use, audio, and durations. These were the, only ease of use was significant. And then the last semester's ease of use as well as durations of the session also was significant. Ease of use was significant here, statistical significant. And the list of for all 3 semesters, the list from the survey questions, the list of independent variables are here. I asked students about audio, ease of use, the frequency of the sessions, and then the use of application session, as well as do you have enough interaction? So these are the examples survey question I asked. Fourth research question is, what about pedagogical model? Is there a model that can be formed to explain students' experience or to help in this kind of learning? This is where I have to switch over to the qualitative side of my study, which is based on content analysis. Essentially, most of my data comes from 3 sources: student interviews, my own reflective journal, and the external review. Okay, and here are the sample students interviews, I've been able to extract this, okay, the themes basically. Learning experience. A student mentioned that it is intimidating during classroom, so through the web conferencing and through the chat is able to help overcome their embarrassment. This person really liked the experience, and he says that it helped them bond together. However, this student says there's distractions because nobody's watching the person, because they've been moved to a lab and they've been accessing, and because I wasn't there, I wasn't looking over their shoulders, and for that reason they were distracted. Okay. When it comes to their feedback on how I did, was they realized that you know, the effort I put in, and also I was able to organize the delivery in the sense that over a different classroom, it worked basically. Okay. For us here, network speed was the issue basically, network, to the point where in one semester, because of external problems, virus activities, it ended up a very frustrating experience. But due credit to all my students, they were, you know, they took it positively. Okay. In terms of reflective journals, basically after each sessions, I wrote about my experience, and that's been placed in the appendix. And from that, I've extracted the themes, and from there, I'm able to build up what is known as, in Lorilar's terminology, pedagogical pattern. And basically, that helped me bring up the model I was able to I will be able to show in a minute. The important thing is, every time this kind of teaching and learning activity takes place, it is very important to conduct orientation sessions, not only just to tell people what it is, but it is important to let them do free practice. Example here is Stephen's session. Everybody can go in and free practice. I also found that if I did not get the etiquette right from the beginning, I will lose control. Okay, and then the things that I did not do well in the first semester, meaning relying on too much lecturing, I gradually move on to focus more on activities, basically. And then, as we can see here, this semester's, because of students' requests, I conducted examination activities, also recorded. Okay, so that's the pattern of pedagogical behavior. This is a sample of external review. I'm sorry, there's a lot of words here, but I've just extracted some of them. And basically, what happened was the reviewer watched the recording and gave me some feedback. This is an example of some sessions, and let me try to identify some issues here. The reviewer basically says that I've used humor, I acknowledge students, and I get people involved, and then noted that the people on the treatment group, because I know them, their names, I was able to address them by name. That makes a difference in terms of making personal connections, and pointing out the difference between two students in the way that the students were more engaging when they were online synchronously. Okay. Nearly coming to the end now. Finally, validity and reliability. Okay. The study of validity and reliability, according to Winter, is huge and very broad. And what I've done was extracted the relevant sections of reliability and validity in terms of honesties, the depth, and the participant research approach, and how neutral was I. So from what I've gathered and from what I can report is that in terms of honesties and confidence, these are real students, registered students, and I had to seek permissions in order to get from the examination departments the results for this particular studies. How rich and depth was it? Well, of the data, I used all the necessary instrumentation that's available, survey, interviews, lots of reflective journals, and external review, and then I did the analysis both quantitative and qualitatively. Participant approach, totally voluntary, okay, and I had no interference in terms of requesting students to participate. This was totally done by my research assistant in order to overcome this power relationship between students and instructors. And how neutral it is. The issues that I've been pinned at has always been you're the instructors, you're also involved in the research. Aren't you confusing, the thing that you do is not totally biased? Sorry, it's not totally objective. My argument is that the methodologies is permitted in action research, and also because I'm on the ground, I'm able to offer a richer report of the experience from the data, as well as knowing exactly what's going on, instead of the traditional observational research whereby the researchers simply do observations. Now, having direct experience helped me understand a lot of the issues. Okay, so in order to address neutralities, research assistants gave me this layer of divide between me and the subjects, and also I had to go through a research ethic boards for approval. Okay. Triangulation, how does the data work between qualitative and quantitative? And this is where the earlier graph helped. In terms of a learning experience, students did say very easy to use, they liked the recording, and they wanted the instructor to appear on the webcam. And in the quantitative data I also look into is from the survey, this is the score for appearance on webcam. So they want to see me on the webcam. Pedagogies, on the, student interviews and instructor respective journal indicate that web conferencing is good for demonstration learning, such as website design and building relationship and having a rapport, okay, which leads to establishing a presence. Positive learning experience, definitely, okay, both qualitative and quantitative data mentioned.